So, in this video, we're going to talk about is growth sustainable and desirable? Before we get to that, we want to talk about the significance of savings to growth. Um, Savings is super important for our ability to grow as an economy because for a lot of businesses, when they're choosing to innovate and create new things, build new factories, buy new capital equipment, they rely on banks to secure loans. And the less money banks have available to loan out, the harder it is going to be for an economy to grow. Typically, that's going to slow down our rate of growth um, because it's harder for banks to give out loans when they don't have a ton of money. So, if total savings rises, more money is available to borrow. We're going to see building new factories, investing in capital equipment and whatnot, and we're going to see more economic growth. So let's get into it. What are the advantages and disadvantages of economic growth? There are going to be two sides of this, people that are anti growth and people that are pro growth. And I'm going to present what each side would say, though I'm not saying where my opinion lies in this. I'm just going to present it as they would. So the anti growth view is that maybe we're growing too fast or we uh, should stop having so much growth. And here are their arguments for why. First, growth creates environmental problems. We're seeing more pollution, global warming, ozone depletion, and other problems within the environment that are all a byproduct of the amount of growth that we have. We have higher air pollution than ever before. If you want an example of this, just look up the air pollution in China from all of their manufacturing. Um, the more rapid rate of growth, the more pollution that is getting put into the environment. And the anti growth view says we're just doing too much and the environment can't handle it. The second argument they have is that it's ineffective at solving social problems. Anti growthers argue that having our economy grow does not help alleviate poverty or homelessness or discrimination. No matter what, that still exists. And if anything, by having so much growth, we've seen a bigger disconnect between the wealthy and the poor and a more unequal distribution of income. They also argue that growth has created a stressful way of life. The idea is growth gives us a higher standard of living, it makes us better off. But anti growthers argue growth has made jobs more stressful, there's more worker burnout, people are feeling like they don't have control over their lives, and a lot of that's coming through technology. The idea that we no longer go to work and leave work at work. Now that we all carry around these little computers in our pockets, it is so easy to get a hold of people, and there is a higher expectation that people are working more and responding to calls and emails at all hours of the day. They also argue that growth is not sustainable, that we are using up our resources far faster than we are going to be able to replace them. Some of our resources that are replaceable and some that are not. And the argument here is we're going to run out. We're going to run out of resources, and then what? What are we going to do? So they say, let's slow growth down. It will be more environmentally sustainable and better. On the flip side of that is pro growth. They argue that growth gives us a higher standard of living. Rising output gives us more income lets us buy more stuff, and all sorts of stuff education, travel, medical care, leisurely activities. It just makes us better off. The second one is that growth enables our government to do more, to provide more infrastructure, more assistance, more police and fire protection. Third argument is that growth is the only way to reduce poverty. Since we live in a society that our government doesn't do much to redistribute income, or maybe you view that they do, um, but they don't do as much as other countries. The only way that we're going to get rid of poverty and homelessness is if we produce more, because more production is going to lead to more income. More income theoretically is going to make it to more people, and we can do better. The next argument is the argument against this idea that work is more stressful and it's harder. Pro growth people say, you've got to be kidding me. We have better working conditions than ever before. A lot of people work in offices and there's heat and air conditioning, and people that are working in factories, there's a machinery to do a lot of the hard stuff that people used to have to do. We're way better off. They also argue it gives us more time for reflection and self fulfillment. Given that the rate of growth that we've had has resulted in a lot of technology and lower um, production times, it's given us more time to fulfill ourselves and do things that are meaningful and important to us. And they argue growth is sustainable. The idea that we're using up resources faster than ever before, while accurate, the question is, are we truly running out of them? Basic supply and demand would suggest if we're running out of resources, the prices would be getting higher. However, for a lot of resources, the exact opposite's been happening. Prices have been going down, and the argument of pro growthers are if we use up a resource, so what? We'll figure out a new way to do it, a new way to produce, and when it happens, if it happens, we'll figure it out. So this is a very different argument than the anti-growthers. They say we will figure it out. So growth to them is only limited by the human imagination. We can figure out how to do it differently if we need to. And then the last argument is that pollution's not necessarily a byproduct of growth. This idea is pollution doesn't necessarily come from growth. It's more viewed as a problem of the commons or a tragedy of the commons. And this is the idea that we treat the environment like common property. And somebody else will take care of it. I don't necessarily have to. The example here is think of the parking lot out front. And when one student decides, oh, I'm just going to throw my trash out my window and it's fine. It's not that big of a deal. It's one fast food bag. It doesn't matter. But when everybody starts to feel that way, you get a parking lot that's full of trash. And so the pro growthers argue that's why the environment is being polluted and used up, is because we treat it as common property and figure somebody else is going to take care of it. There's a great video in your PowerPoint that is econ teacher using South Park to highlight the tragedy of the commons.